Hello, it's Matt here. Today I'm going to be doing a list of my favourite albums of 2018. I'm aware I haven't been around for a while. That's because I've been at university. I've just finished my first semester, start my second semester tomorrow. And I wanted to get back into making YouTube videos and trying to upload them on a semi-regular basis because I have been very, very terrible at doing so. So I thought, what better place to start uploading again than talking about my favourite albums of the previous year. I'm aware that we're a month into 2019 now. My list is very late and that's very unprofessional, but regardless, I thought better late than never, and we talk about some of my favourite projects of the year. So without further ado, let us begin. So number 15, there are 15 albums in this list, and at the bottom of the list, but still in the list, is Iridescence by the legendary hip-hop boy band Brockhampton. Try saying that really quickly 5 times. And they came out with a very interesting addition to their discography, having released 3 albums in 2017, the Saturation Trilogy, which blew up all over the internet. Everyone went quite mad for it, and rightly so, because they are 3 very good projects, all with some fantastic songs on them, and got very popular very, very quickly, and now probably one of the biggest groups in hip-hop at the moment, sort of almost verging into pop, and that's kind of the image they're going for, this whole boy band aesthetic that Kevin Abstract and co are such a fan of. But I didn't think their new album was as good as the Saturation albums. Unfortunately, I did still enjoy it, and there were certain songs like Juver and Berlin, which I personally found more exciting than a lot of the cuts on this album, which were a little bit too poppy, a little bit too clean for my liking. But regardless, still, some very well-written and interesting pop songs on this album, with a hip-hop twist. I don't know where exactly we're going to put the line, because it is rapping, a lot of it is. But regardless, it's still a good project, still very respectable, and I enjoyed it very much. At 14 and 13, we have 2 EPs. 14 is the Collapse EP by Aphex Twin, a very well put together 5-track EP with some fantastic songs on it, like T69 Collapse, full of jittering, stuttery electronics, really interestingly programmed synthesizers and drum machines, and unconventional song structures as well that I appreciated. I mean, it's a typical Aphex Twin release. And 13, I put FM by Vince Staples, one of my favourite rappers at the moment, and perhaps one of the best up-and-coming artists, if you can still call him up-and-coming. He's had about 4 projects out now that have really... 5 projects, sorry, I got that wrong. And this is the latest one with a bit of a twist to it, much more sort of old school hip hop and a focus on his rapping skills as opposed to production in Big Fish Theory, with the theme of being on a radio station, which was kind of cool. You know, I think he hooked up with an American radio station and had them feature loads of different bits to sort of make it feel like kind of a 30-minute segment of one of their shows, which was really cool and a really nice idea to add to it. And of course, Earl Sweatshirt played a part on the album as well, which was pretty cool. So yeah, it was an enjoyable listen, definitely. At 12, we have Time and Place by Kera Kera Benito, another sort of kind of indie pop kind of group, if you can call them that, because they're not that. But yeah, their first album was very poppy, very electronic, and they've come back with this new album which still kind of has that influence. The songs are still written in a very similar way. Very kind of cutesy vocals from Sarah Benito and some cracking production from the other band, but it's a lot more guitar oriented now, which I appreciate and I enjoy. Not to say that the electronic was bad at all, and if anything, I kind of preferred it. But still, the songs are great on this album, and it still equally has that aesthetic and that integrity of the band. They haven't sacrificed that at all, they haven't sold out or tried to appeal to anyone. They've completely changed their sound without sacrificing any of that, and I really respect that. It's got some fantastic songs on it, and it is pretty much perfect start to back. I can't really think of a bad song on the album. My favourite would be Only Acting, which is incredibly catchy, in spite of the weird sort of techno freak out at the end of the song. 11, we have Oil of Every Pearl's Uninsides by experimental producer Sophie, who came out with a number of singles that she produced for various artists, such as Charlie XCX and the aforementioned Vince Staples. And I've been a fan of some of her songs for quite a while, songs like Yeah Right, and all of the songs off her 2015 compilation, like Lemonade and Vizzy, which were very poppy, almost like kind of PC music kind of camp, the same sort of stuff that people like Charlie XCX have been working in for so long, and hence probably why they hooked up. But anyway, she's come out with this new album this year, and it is very out there, very... It's very hard to describe this album, because it's so one of a kind and so unique, and I've heard nothing like it in my life. Songs like Face Shopping sort of kind of throw away the idea of harmony and melody and tonality. It all goes out the window. And instead it's a very rhythmic music at its forefront, with all these squelchy, plasticky kind of synths that populate her music that she programs herself, and I love them. That's really what makes it for me, personally. The aesthetic of it is very sexual, very kind of extroverted music that makes you think, makes you sort of sit back and sort of question what you're listening to for a while. It can be applied in a pop scenario or a rap scenario, and it's a very versatile sound palette that she works with, which I appreciate and enjoy very much. And that is exploited to the full on this album, because some of the songs are so different. Like songs like Immaterial, which is structured as if it were a very traditional pop song with kind of auto-tune, cutesy kind of vocals, almost kind of continuing that KKB kind of theme. And then you got experimental cuts like Face Shopping, Pony Boy. You know, it's all over the place, but it's very cool, and I love the themes of the album as well. It's a very interesting listen. At number 10, we have Some Rap Songs by Earl Sweatshirt, who I talked about a minute ago. This is a very lo-fi, kind of grimy release from Earl, who's always sort of specialised on rapping over beats like that. However, Earl has decided to team up some very different people from his usual Odd Future crowd and has moved away from that completely now. Which is probably the best move for him in his career. As much as I like the likes of Tyler the Creator and Frank Ocean very much, Earl has always been not the outcast of the group so much, but he's always brought something a little bit different to the table, and I respect the fact he's going in a very different direction now with his music. Let me tell you, the sampling on this album is out of this world, but hands down some of the best sampling I've heard in a very long time. Just so catchy and so sort of warm, and his bars are great on this album too. Earl has always been one of the best rappers in the game, if not the best, but you know, that depends on your personal opinion. I think it's kind of summed up by the closing track, which is just an instrumental, but it's a really happy instrumental. So yeah, I really enjoyed this album. Number 9, we have Yay by Kanye West, the second album to come out of his Wyoming sessions that took place last summer. And I was slightly underwhelmed by this album again, in a similar sort of fashion to how I felt about the Brockhampton album. As much as I hate to say it, because it is a very different direction for a Kanye project. For starters, again, it's a lot shorter, it's only 7 tracks long, which is rare considering he usually tries to cram at least sort of 12, 13 tracks into his albums, if not way more. I mean, the only album I can think of where he hasn't done that in the past is Yeezus. And the whole point of that album was that it was minimal and that it was kind of to the point and there was no filler on that album. Whereas here, I do feel like there is some filler, which is kind of hard to believe considering it's only 20 sort of minutes long. But still, it's high up on my list because I do think it was a very interesting angle that he took with this project. It's a lot more introspective, it's a lot more introverted, and it's sort of taking a look inside of how he is as a father and as a family man, as opposed to some kind of crazy celebrities going up doing tons of drugs and getting with tons of women and stuff like that, you know. So yeah, and musically it was also a very good project for Kanye. But some of the songs on this album really almost more like pop songs than anything, or rock songs. Again, that kind of same vibe going on here. Songs like Ghost Town, which is much more guitar driven than a lot of his work, with anthemic choruses and choirs and all this kind of crazy stuff going on in the background, which I really appreciate. And it's a much more easy listen if you look past the first track, which is about him talking about how he wants to kill someone. That could be his ego though. That could be a fan theory right there. Certainly a different angle that Kanye took on this project, but I do feel like it was executed well, slightly rushed, slightly too short in my opinion, with lack of a big single to anchor the album around. I know a lot of people say Ghost Town is that song, but for me personally it lacked that kind of driving beat to it that something like Power or Black Skinhead or even something like Father Stretch My Hands had. So, you know, that's why it's as low as it is on this list, because I am a big Kanye fan, I'm not going to lie. At number 8 we have Year of the Snitch by Death Grips. You all know what I think of that because I uploaded a video about it last summer. Much more lo-fi, kind of shoegazy kind of vibe they're going for again, which seems to be a prevailing trend this year. But a very enjoyable listen. Probably not their best album, as I've always been someone who is much more of a fan of the cleaner kind of more clinical sound that Death Grips have come up with, which allows MC Ride the room he needs to really showcase his full vocal ability, which is probably why No Love Deep Web is one of my favourite albums by them. The Money Store perhaps also, as opposed to something like Ex-Military or the Jenny Death side of Powers That Be. But that's just personal preference. It's still a fantastic album. Some of the lyrics on this thing are great. Black Paint is one of the best singles they've ever released, and a completely different direction that they take. Much more explicitly kind of hardcore metal as opposed to experimental hip-hop, which is nice to see. It's nice to see them broadening out into different genres and trying new things, which is what any experimental band worth their salt should be doing. At number 7 we have Safe in the Hands of Love by Eve Tuma. Another kind of producer, recently signed to Warp Records, the label that housed Aphex Twin and Ortega and loads of other big artists in the electronic experimental scene. And he's come out with a cracking album, which has some fantastic singles in it on the form of Noid and Lifetime, which really showcases full talent as a musician. Again, kind of blending the sort of traditional rock instruments, the bass and the drums are very organic and natural sounding with some really interesting synthetic textures. But more than that, it makes you think, this album does, and it's kind of a bit creepy, a little bit unsettling at times. The opening track, Faith in Nothing But Salvation, I think that's his name. I don't know, you can look that up yourself. It's a very unsettling way to open the album with these weird kind of clustery jazz kind of chords played on the horn section of whatever package he's been using. Again, new textures and new kind of sounds that are being explored on this album I really enjoyed. At number 6 we have Isolation by Kali Uchis. The American-Colombian singer-songwriter came out with her debut album in April, and it was a very enjoyable album, this was, because of the multitude of genres that she explored, really showcasing her singing talents over a variety of styles. There's so much going on, so many different ideas that are bouncing around in this album, all kind of brought into one package that just works. And she's had a lot of help on this album from producers, people like Kevin Parker out of Tame Impala, Steve Lacy out of the Internet, and their contributions on this album really also enhance it and make Kali even stand out more. And obviously she's a fantastic singer, she's got so much talent. A lot of the songs are completely different. She sort of goes into sort of kind of Spanish Latino pop kind of songs and like Nuestro Planeta, more traditional sort of kind of popular kind of upbeat fall to the floor kind of beats on songs like Just a Stranger, a lot more sort of chilled R&B kind of vibe on Tomorrow, and then also very sort of Amy Winehouse kind of esque styles of music on songs like Killer, which is a fantastic way to end the album. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. It was really exciting to listen to the first time around because of how unpredictable it was. I'd love to see her come out with more projects. At number 5 we have another similarly varied album in the form of Be the Cowboy by Mitski, and this was, if anything, even more sort of varied, but the song structure generally that she employs is keep it as concise and short as possible again. So it was quite a short album. I mean, it's about 15 tracks long, but only comes in at a running time of about 38 minutes. So it's refreshing to hear a singer-songwriter who's expressing her emotions in such an authentic and natural way, not beat around the bush as much. And it's quite a happy album. I know there are songs about her being lonely, like the lead single of the album, Nobody, and the very harrowing closer in 2 slow dances, which actually made me cry. So it's a really sad song. It reminds me of True Love Waits by Radiohead. It's the same kind of vibe of finishing an album on quite a somber note. But it's full of sort of really nice upbeat love songs at the same time. The standout one for me was Me and My Husband, which is about halfway through in the runtime, and kind of employing that big band kind of feel, with lots of trumpets and saxophones and trombones, adding to the piano chords and upbeat drums that she uses. And her voice is amazing. She's such a good singer. If anything, more of a sort of trained singer than someone like Callie, who sort of more kind of relies on her natural intonations. And Mitski's actually studied music at university level, I think, and has put out 4 albums before that. So she knows what she's doing. She's a very talented woman, and I really respect and enjoy her music a lot. So I'd love to see what else she comes out with in the future. But this was a fantastic release. The critics loved it as well, from what I can tell. I think Pitchfork gave it Album of the Year, which at the time I was very surprised by. But having really listened to it again now and appreciated it, I can understand why. It's a fantastic release. At number 4, we have Daytona by Pusha T, who is probably the most underrated rapper in the world right now, in my opinion. His talents, Clips. Haha, see what I did there? He was in a group called Clips with his brother. That wasn't funny at all. Pretty much everyone else at the moment. I know I love people like Vince Staples and Earl Sweatshirt, but Pusha T is so much more clinical and almost aggressive in the way he raps. And his flows are so to the point. I love Daytona. It's how concise it was again. Here it's traditional sampling, kind of almost like the college dropout era kind of sampling he was using, like MPCs and drum machines and things like that he was employing. And honestly, it has a fantastic effect, and it's complemented so well by Pusha's amazing vocals, and some of the lyrics on this thing just phenomenal. Like, if you know, you know. The hook on that, I'm not even sure what it means, but it's cool. It just sounds cool, you know. You could drive down a road, you drove down the motorway, just blasting that on your speaker and feel like you were cool. And it's only, again, 20 odd minutes long. It's very digestible. So yeah, not too out there, but he gets his points across. And obviously, Pusha T also released The Story of Adidon, which was probably the best diss track of the year, if we're not counting Kill Shot, but I don't really like Eminem, so, you know. And that was also a fantastic release, and it's kind of a shame that wasn't on the album, but it was released a couple of months later. The whole "you're hiding a child," that's savage. Savagery. So yeah, another artist who's had a great 2018. At number 3, we have I'm All Ears by Let's Eat Grandma, which kind of blew my mind, as I knew nothing about this band before 2018. And they came out with it. I found out they're two girls about my age from Norwich, which is kind of scary when you think about how much they've done compared to how much most people, including myself, have done at the age of 19. But yeah, honestly, it's astounding music. Some of the stuff is, again, kind of pop, but experimental pop. And that's what I like about it so much, because not only are their vocals at the forefront of the music, and you know, the melodies and the lyrics, the main part to be appreciated, but the backing is phenomenally produced on this album. There's so many interesting timbres and textures, the synthesizers that are employed. Sounds like Falling Into Me, where it breaks down into this synth sort of build-up, strips away all the instrumentation to focus on these gargantuan sounding synthesizers with all kinds of reverb and other stuff that's stacked on top of it, and it just sounds massive. And the drum production's amazing on this as well. Someone's a bit of a nerd about that. Like, the kick just pierces perfectly through the music on the majority of these songs. And there are all kinds of different songs that are on this album, but they all sort of feel very homogenous in their style. So not only have we got an experimental banger in the form of Hot Pink, which was actually produced by Sophie as well, a very similar style to her album, but we have like a really nice pop song in the form of It's Not Just Me, a lot more sort of slow, devotional love kind of song in Falling Into Me, and then sort of lovelorn kind of heartbreak ballad in sort of 12/8 timing, triple time in Snakes and Ladders. So 4 songs in quick succession, really, which show off their talents as a band. And it was a fantastic release. And sort of closing with a really nice piano ballad in the form of Ava before the epic, and I say epic meaning massive, not epic like the meme word, in the form of Donnie Darko, which is kind of emotional and full of all kinds of interesting synths that are brought in and out. It does a lot of new things that I'd love to hear in pop music in the future, and whether it will have any mainstream appeal or not, I don't know. But I love their voices, I love the melodies that they come up with on these albums and the kind of different textures they play with. Number 2, right, final 2. And it's another album released from the Wyoming Sessions by Kanye, and it is Kids See Ghosts. Hooray, wow, shock horror. Everyone loved this album, didn't they? And rightly so, because it was fantastic. Again, I know I talk a lot about production on this channel. This is some of the best production Kanye has ever come up with. It's a psychedelic masterpiece. And there's quite a distinction, I think, between the top 2 and the rest of the albums. As much as I love the rest of them, Kids See Ghosts kind of is at the point where we're kind of defining new genres and breaking new boundaries that haven't really been explored in hip-hop music in general. Because it is a fusion of hip-hop with kind of psychedelic rock almost. And that's most apparent on the song Free, Part 2, featuring Ty Dolla $ign. And honestly, my favourite part of the album, on top of that, is how well Kanye and Kid Cudi complement each other. And I've always felt that Kid Cudi's best music has come when he's been collaborating with Kanye, as hard as that may be to hear. If you're a Kid Cudi fan, and for that I'm very sorry. Comparing his solo music, stuff like Speeding Bullet to Heaven, with, I don't know, the first few tracks off Dark Fantasy that he features on, you know, there's a bit of a difference in quality, in my opinion. But Cudi is on form so well on this album. His voice actually sounds really, really good, and that has always been a little bit patchy at times in my opinion, but you can tell the amount of emotion and passion that's gone into these lyrics in this album. 2 of the biggest songs on it, Fourth Dimension, which kind of featured this crazy sort of Christmas song that's been warped and played backwards and turned into a beat, and it's really catchy and cool. And then this psychedelic sort of 5-minute piece called Reborn, which everyone knows about. I heard it in an Urban Outfitters shop and it kind of made me a bit sad. I don't know why. It's kind of accessible in that respect, but at the same time, there's so much going on here, and the beat breakdown in the middle of this song is phenomenal. Really, it does feel like a rebirth of sorts, having witnessed, along with everyone else in the world, about the sort of mental struggles that Kanye has gone through this year, and how the media has covered it, and his support for Trump, and I don't know, I'm not getting into that. That's, you know, I'm not here to talk about politics, I'm here to talk about music. And Reborn sort of means something. I feel like that's a really heartfelt and personal song. Also for Kid Cudi, which for him, he's just made his way out of rehab. So yeah, it's a personal album for both of them, but the production in this is just mind-blowing. And number 1 is 7 by Beach House. I love this album a lot. This is an album I'm going to look back on in 2018 and sort of think about the good times and the nostalgia, because it's such a warm and beautiful and luscious album. I've always really enjoyed Beach House's music. Like Teen Dream and Bloom are 2 of the best dream pop albums of all time. And really, I mean, can you compare them to anyone else? They take the sort of dream pop kind of thing that was really big in the 90s through bands like Slowdive and Mazzy Star, and then make it electronic and bring it up to the modern age and do their own thing. And honestly, like, Victoria Legrand's vocals are fantastic, and they always have been, always really sort of personal and heartfelt, but especially on 7 because it has more of an experimental edge as well. The guitar tones are gorgeous on this project, almost subtly gritty at times, but nonetheless still very warm and saturated and lovely to listen to. My favourite songs off this album, one is Lose Your Smile, which is a really sleepy kind of beautiful song with these gorgeous little pluck guitars that are played on it and quite a slow beat. Another would be Drunk in LA, which is quite an intense listen actually, and there's a lot of layers to it. There's a lot of layers synthesizers that go on top that really add to the texture, and it's a very thick kind of song. That's it, you never heard a beach song described like that before, have you? Start to finish, it's not a bad song on this album. It's such an enjoyable, beautiful album to listen to. It's relaxing yet simultaneously thought-provoking. It invokes feelings of nostalgia, it invokes feelings of almost loss and hurt. The sad ending of Last Ride, those beautiful piano lines that are played at the start, really kind of struck a chord in me when I listened to it for the first time, and still do now. start to finish, overwhelming project. I loved it. I think it might be their best release, but I might be kind of biased because obviously I've been around and actively into Beach House when they released this project. But an amazing album, and I don't think anything, in my opinion, topped that this year. So that's my list. I hope you enjoyed. Sorry if I talked for way too long. I haven't realised how long I've been filming for. If you did enjoy, please give it a like. Please subscribe to see more content like this when I actually get around to uploading. And yeah, let me know your thoughts and opinions down below in the comments, and I'll try and reply to as many as I can. And yeah, I will see you in the next video.